cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer,
Good evening once again, folks, and welcome to Doctor and Call. It is Tuesday evening, and of course, that's the time when we bring you our Doctor and Call program. And this evening, we have a very special program. We do have a doctor with us this evening. However, he's not a medical doctor, so later on, don't call and tell him, Doc, I have a pain in the back and I need to know what to do. He won't be able to help you. I probably might be able to help you more, but nevertheless, we have with us this evening Dr. Damian Greaves. Doc, good evening and welcome to Doctor and Call. Yes, you need to unmute?
Yes,
there we go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, and thank you for clearing the air, because certainly I will not be able to handle those questions about people's physical conditions or even mental or psychological or emotional conditions. So thank you for clearing the air on that, because you know how that could be. But I want to thank you very much for inviting me to this program. And although it is called Doctor on Call, I guess every now and then there will be individuals who may not be doctors, but who could speak to certain subjects, particularly of a more social, economic, and political nature, but related to health.
Definitely. And, as you mentioned, that is always said, a wealthy nation is a healthy nation.
Yep.
So definitely we need to touch on all areas that are connected to health in some way or the other. This evening, folks, we want to look at the social impact of chronic diseases. And there's also the commission that has been set up to address issues relating to that, chronic illnesses. And we do know we have a lot of that here in Grenada. In fact, the consequences of chronic illness include physical, mental, social consequences, and they affect patients and their family members, their friends, caregivers, and all of that. So definitely there's a lot to talk about this evening. Dr. Greaves will chat with us on it. But before we look at the commission and what they're involved in, I want us to look at some of the social impacts, because they do have some, and it does impact not just the patient, but the family members and the society by extension. So Dr. Greaves, let's start with that. We know the commission, we're going to get to that, but chronic illnesses is a major thing in Grenada. Many people. Some of the common ones: hypertension, diabetes, arthritis, and these are just three. Asthma, that they come to mind right away. And we do understand, those of us who have those conditions, we do understand what is involved. But aside from the medical aspect, Doc, the social and economic impact. Let's start there and let's talk about that a bit.
And let's frame that in a particular context. First of all, we need to understand that chronic diseases are major causes of death and illness globally. That's a given. Secondly, let's take it from the global to the Caribbean. Let's say the region of the Americas. You just mentioned some of them. Cardiovascular diseases like diabetes. You talk about cancer. You talk about chronic respiratory diseases. And we're saying that in the region of the Americas, of which the Caribbean forms a part, 3 out of every 4 deaths would be responsible. 3 out of every 4 deaths would be caused by chronic diseases. And in the Caribbean region, listen to this very carefully. In the Caribbean region, listeners, the Caribbean region has the highest mortality from non-communicable chronic diseases in the Americas. And there are 7 countries in order of what I'm going to call out, where you will see we have the highest. Guyana, Haiti, Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, and Grenada, and that's in rank order. They all have mortality rates above 583.5 per 100,000 people in the country. And listen to this, 40% of those deaths occur prematurely, which means you really ought not to be dying at that particular age. And we say in persons aged 30 to 69 years of age, 40%. And we're talking about heart attack, talking about stroke, we're talking about diabetes, causing most of these premature deaths, followed by cancer, hypertension, and the rest of them, and so on. But we are very concerned about the prevalence of diabetes in the Caribbean, which is twice. The prevalence of diabetes in the Caribbean is twice the global average.
Doc, let me just stop you for a moment, all right? And I just want to backtrack for everyone listening so that they understand what we're talking about. The Caribbean region, the highest mortality rate, 583.1. When we speak about high mortality rate, just break it down for us and tell us.
We're talking about the number of deaths per 100,000 people within the population. And you can see 583.5 is high by any standard. By any standard, by any stretch of the imagination, that is high. But you're talking about 40% of the deaths occur prematurely. You're talking about people between 30 and 69 years of age. That's people in the prime. That is your productive force in the society. If you're talking about 30 to 69, you're talking about your productive force. And if you have that kind of thing happen, you can understand how it will affect you economically, because that's your productive force. These are the people at work to produce wealth for the country. And if people who produce wealth for the country are ill, then you can understand that you're not firing on all pistons, to put it in a particular way. You're not operating at optimum capacity, in other words, at full capacity. Because you can imagine if people are sick, if there's illness, they will not be able to come to work every day. They will not be as efficient. They lack energy. They have to take days off. They have to take medication. And you can understand the implications of that for the productivity of a country. And if you talk about 40% of your productive force, 30 years of age to 69 years of age, then you can understand how problematic that can be.
Right. And if we took it closer to home, we're talking about people between the ages of 30 and 69. Let's just narrow it down. People between the ages of, let's say, 30 and 50. What about these people who are probably the sole supporters of a family?
That's what we're talking about. And we know, Godfrey, not only in the Caribbean, not only in Grenada, but in the Caribbean as well, that is a problem. Because especially in these times, and COVID has brought that home to us, COVID-19 has brought that home to us. Sometimes if there were two people working in the family, now it's one. Sometimes if there was one person working in the family, it's none, or on and off employment, seasonal employment, whatever you want to call it. So you could understand what it does to the household, and by extension, the community, and by further extension, the society at large, or the country at large.
Yes, indeed.
So if you look at these levels, you could understand the pressure it puts on people in the society in terms of producing. And so chronic diseases is a serious thing we have to look into. It's a serious problem that we should not take lightly. And guess what? We have to do it at levels. First of all, self-management is critical. And I've heard Dr. Nixon and your other doctors on the program speak about the importance of self-management, and people like Lydia Brown of the Grenada Nutrition Council. Self-management. It means that there must be, in other words, I like to tell people, if you have a particular disease, you must take responsibility for it. You must claim it. You must claim it like you'll claim victory at a lotto which you just advertised. Right? You must claim the disease. Once you claim the disease, then you must look at the self-management, because that is critical. And of course, the next level is for the community management at the level of the district at the level of the district nurse or the doctor in the community, in the health center. And of course, you go to the secondary level of the hospital and you go to the tertiary level, whatever that level has to do in terms of dealing with your situation. But the first call of duty, the first port of call for that ship called you as an individual is for you to bring that ship into port.
Right.
And claim the disease and begin to try to manage it with the help of those people who have the expertise. And that is critical. It's not a situation where I have this disease, I'll depend on the doctor, I'll depend on the nurse. Yes, they need to be depended on because they have the available experience or expertise. Clinically, that is, from the point of view of understanding how to manage the disease by diagnosing, by prescribing, by treating, things of that nature. But you have to know yourself as well, know how your body feels, know how your body operates, and begin to take charge of what is going on in terms of managing your disease.
Right. Indeed. And one of the worrying things, Doc, is that you can, as an individual, if you don't properly self-manage, you can probably end up with more than one chronic diseases.
Oh yes, and that's where we talk about multi-morbidity. In other words, several illnesses, several sicknesses. So you may be diabetic, but at the same time asthmatic, and at the same time have some respiratory ailment that could cause some problems apart from the asthma and so on, and all of those things. And that is what we are seeing. And guess what, Godfrey? As we get older in the society, we can anticipate that there will be these multiple morbidities or many illnesses. I'm certain there are people listening to us tonight, and I didn't say good night to those people out there. Good night, everybody. I am certain there are people there who could tell you they have diabetes and hypertension.
Oh yes.
And they perhaps have asthma as well. And they perhaps have some other ailment that can be deemed to be a chronic ailment.
Arthritis, which is very common.
Which is very common. And the older you get, the more there is the likelihood of having these multiple illnesses, if you want to put it that way. And the more the requisite preparation has to be made by you, the family, the community, and the state to take care of that. Because guess what? We are although people are dying quite a bit these days, I notice, but we are also becoming what you call an age society. Because people are living longer. Because let's face it, you have the opportunity to have the medication and to have the treatment, so people are living longer. So as you live longer, there'll be greater dependency on others in the society and the government or the state in the society to take care of your needs. So what we need to do across the region is begin to prepare for that situation where people will be older, we're talking about 70, 80, 90, have those core or multiple morbidities, and then have to be taken care of. And I believe that we are not doing sufficiently within the region. We are not doing sufficiently to look at that situation because it will hit our doorsteps very soon, and we will have to find a means of helping out in that situation. Mm-hmm. So we need to prepare for it.
Right. As individuals, it is so more important to take care of yourselves. Now that you've explained, the extent of the impact. So an individual is affected. His family could be affected. His friends could be affected. The community could be affected, and then the country could be affected, because someone who has to play a part in production, you are not able to, and because of that, we lack some of the things that we may need, and there's
greater dependency, and then there's a greater dependency on others, and putting more pressure in terms of the productive forces and the production of wealth.
Yes.
So I mean, it's not something that we can take lightly. We have paid a lot of attention to HIV/AIDS, which eventually became a chronic disease, apart from infectious disease and so on, a communicable disease. And we have paid a lot of attention, but sadly, we are not paying sufficient attention to this creeping problem. It's an insidious situation, meaning it's slow but harmful. It is slow but harmful. Mm-hmm. And you know, when something is slow and harmful, sometimes you ignore it,
yes,
or you tend to kick the can down the road, meaning that you tend to delay and say, okay, we'll have time to do that and so on. Mm-hmm. Because look at how COVID-19 got the attention. Yes. Immediately. Because, of course, it was immediate and people could see how things were worsening and so on. But this is a time bomb. All you need is a keg of gunpowder. It's a time bomb waiting to detonate. Mm-hmm. And we have to take control of it. And I have to applaud the governments of the region, including the government of Grenada, by taking steps since 2007 to ensure that you have things in place. I think, and the Caribbean governments have to be applauded for taking it to the UN General Assembly and highlighting the importance of dealing with chronic diseases. And then the other countries came on board and other regions and took it from there. But somewhere along the line, we also dropped the ball.
Right. How?
We're reeling from that.
How did we drop the ball?
We dropped the ball because once we got to the UN and we got things in place, we made the pronouncement that there should be chronic disease commissions across the region. So each region had a chronic disease commission comprising several civil society organizations, i.e. NGOs, that is NGOs and grassroots organizations, but also some representation across ministries, very much related to health or very much impacting health. But somehow across the region, we have not taken as seriously as we ought to the chronic disease commissions, right? We have not taken it as seriously as we ought to. And we dropped the ball, and then boom, COVID-19 came, and guess what? The situation on the ground with chronic diseases was exacerbated, or it worsened, because now you focus all the attention, and you reconfigured and you rearrange and you reshaped and your human resources, your nurses, your doctors, and everything else, the finances and so on. So we were caught with our proverbial pants below our ankles, mm-hmm. leaving everything unnecessarily exposed.
You know, and interestingly, with all the focus on COVID-19, it was the people with the chronic illnesses that were dying.
Yes, because and that's where we say when we talk about a chronic, we talk about a pandemic. Meaning worldwide, every country touched by it. Now experts are talking about a syndemic, which means it's interacting with your social determinants of health and causing the situation to be worse. Social determinants of health, your poverty. So those who are poor are the ones who really face it. Mm-hmm. Those who may be not so educated. Those who may be discriminated against for whatever reason on certain grounds. Those who may be physically differently able or mentally differently abled. Mm-hmm. These are the kinds of things we are talking about. Those who live perhaps in the rural versus the urban areas. These are the social determinants of health. But you also have the commercial determinants of health. So all of the things that you sell to people that may not necessarily help your immune system, like the soft drinks and using the salt and using the oils and fats that you had a wonderful program for the past 5 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yes.
Issues. Very impressively indeed, because this is what compromises your ability to be able to handle those kinds of situations. So we have paid an inordinate amount of attention to COVID-19 and no fault of anybody because it was immediate. The immediacy of it, the urgency of it, you had to pay attention. No fault of anybody. Yes, we have to pay the attention. But we should not have paid the attention so much to it that we ignored chronic diseases. So you found people with chronic diseases not being able to find their medication, not being able to find the requisite human resources to help them, the nurses and doctors, because all hands on deck for COVID-19, which now has become a pandemic, which now is a syndemic, interacting viciously and vigorously with our social determinants of health. which of course we are beginning to see some very, very, very frightening pictures.
Right. Now, Doc, according to the Gap Finder tools, Grenada's life expectancy is at what, 74.2 years.
Men or women? Or you're talking in general?
General. Yeah. I mean, give and take.
The women are slightly higher, but that's okay.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about chronic diseases. Based on the lifestyles, the management, you mentioned just now, those who are selling the soft drinks and all of those processed foods. Do you think we can change or increase our life expectancy if we were to pay more attention in that direction and focus more on the healthy stuff?
Absolutely. I wish we had a quiz tonight, Godfrey, because one of the questions I would ask, which of the following poses the greatest risk to morbidity, which is illness, and mortality, which is death? Is it unhealthy diets? Is it unsafe sex? Is it alcohol, drug, and tobacco use? Which one? The answer is definitely unhealthy diets. Unhealthy diets pose the greatest risk to illness and death worldwide, including the Caribbean, including Grenada. That's a given. And that's why we have to fight tooth and nail to deal with that. What is the latest agenda that we have? To look at what we call a front of package warning labels, where we are trying to use the octagonal warnings, which would depict the amount of the whole business of salt, sugars, fats, the same thing we were discussing, so that people can be aware of what they are buying. And I'm saying you have to couch this within the human rights situation. It is the right of every citizen to know what you are eating and drinking from whatever you purchase. It is the right of the citizen to pick up this on the supermarket shelf in terms of the octagonal labels where it says 5% sodium and say, listen, I'm rejecting this. Let me get something that has lower sodium or no sodium at all.
Right.
It is the human right of the individual, from even a health security position, from even a healthy lifestyle position, for them to know the content of the bottle or the package that they are buying, so that they can make an intelligent decision as to whether to reject or purchase. And it comes down to the whole business, and that is where health literacy, health education and health literacy is important. It means we must teach people what is bad for them and what is good for them from a health literacy point of view, so that when they walk into the supermarket, Godfrey can say, not me. I don't like the saturated fats here. Sorry. Too much sugar, I'm sorry. Too many milligrams of sugar or too many grams of sugar, I'm sorry. No way, not for me. This is, and that is where we must empower, facilitate the empowerment of people insofar as what may be in what they are buying, to say no or to say yes.
But Doc,
their response.
But Doc, isn't it? I mean, doesn't it go both ways? Because yes, what you were saying is very correct, and I love the move so that people can be aware and understand and take the measures to protect themselves. But we're talking social, economic impacts.
Yes.
Now, it goes both ways, because what about the people who do not have the money? They cannot afford, the economics doesn't allow them to purchase the items that are good for them or better for them. How do we deal with that?
Now that is a very important question, and this is where we come back to our agriculture and nutrition in terms of eating what we are growing and growing what we are eating. You're absolutely correct. It also comes to a policy decision on the part of the state, on the part of the government of the day, to put things in place to facilitate individuals who may not have the financial wherewithal to purchase certain things. Because obviously, let's cut to the chase, vegetables are very expensive. Right?
Yes.
Fruits are very expensive in some situations if perhaps you don't own land or you don't have the fruits. But it is also true that there's an abundance of fruit sometimes, but people reject it and go and take on what is on the supermarket shelves in terms of what is processed. So this is where so our palates, we have acquired what I call foreign palates, foreign tastes in some forms. And sometimes you are led by the packaging. Packaging is important because let nobody fool you. Psychologists are involved in advertising and will tell you how a supermarket shelf should be packed and so on, put certain things for the children so that at a certain eye level so they can see it and put pressure on the parents to purchase it and things of that nature. So you're asking a very good question which goes towards the heart of policy decision making and the heart of the vision of the state and those who control the levers of power in the state to deal with those situations. In keeping with that, the Chronic Disease Commission, which I happen to be chair of in Grenada, we are actually looking at a national childhood obesity policy and action plan for the state of Grenada, and these are some of the issues that we will raise there in order to deal with this. And we haven't even spoken about children yet. Guess what, Godfrey? 1 out of every 3. 1 child out of every 3 in the Caribbean is obese. Grenada not excluded. And guess what? If you begin with that obesity from what we eat, from physical inactivity, not even moving around and so on, sitting down in front of the TV with your salty snacks and your sugary snacks, on your sugary beverages, sitting down, the waistline is expanding, cardiovascular disease is knocking at the door, and guess what? The obesity is there, and once you're obese, you transit naturally into chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes. So you understand?
Yes, yes.
The lifestyle has to change. And so, and just one more point. We're talking about now, in the Caribbean, we are talking about the 5x5 priorities. And the 5x5 priorities would speak to the 5 major chronic diseases, cardiovascular disease, including heart attack, as I said, stroke, hypertension, cancer, chronic respiratory diseases. But when we say 5x5, we're saying the 5 priority areas with the 5 risk factors. What are they? Tobacco use, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, and the harmful use of alcohol. Note what we said, the harmful use of alcohol. We didn't just say alcohol. We said the harmful use of alcohol and air pollution. Because air pollution is becoming a feature now in terms of some of the chronic respiratory diseases we see that our households are beginning to come in with now. We talk about Sahara dust. We talk about sometimes poor ventilation of households in various communities and so on, which could, of course, trigger some of those things. Now, I'm not a physician, so I do not want to go into the clinical details or the physiological details of that. I'm just saying these are some of the issues that we have to put on the table and speak to very seriously.
Okay, so Doc, let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, a couple more questions, and then we would go into the commission and the work that they're doing. So stay with us, folks. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Cancer. Pharmacy offers both wholesale and retail pharmaceutical and over-the-counter products. We have the most competitive and affordable prices. We are the agents for Vit Plus multivitamin for healthy everyday lifestyle and Sonatogen powder. Hills and Valley Pharmacy supplies the best quality, name brand clinical products such as Rescue Oil, Bio Oil, Neutrogena, Aveeno, and Clarisil. We offer the most convenient opening hours. Our telephone numbers are 435-6904 or 6903. Remember, at Hills and Valley Pharmacy, your health is our business. We care.
Now open, Hills and Valley Medicare Center, your one-stop for medical supplies, massage therapy, physiotherapy, and an in-house physician. At Hills and Valley, your health is our business.
We support you at every stage of your life.
For business. for your education,
for your financial freedom,
for that new ride.
Upgrade your life with the Communal. Contact us today.
Back in 2018, I ran into some conflict with the law, which led me to being in a rehabilitation center. While I was there in the beginning, I thought all hope was lost. But then I found myself being engaged in a lot of rehabilitation programs and skill-based activities, making better use of my time, and then I started getting back some hope and began moving forward. Before I got into the rehabilitation center, I had some issues. I used to pray for something better in my life, and something better has come. Maybe not in the best way expected, but my life has changed for the better. In the rehabilitation center, I learned a lot of things that I use in my life today, like babaing and business skills. Today I am looking forward to being an independent barber, using my business skills while I continue to do skills training. We all deserve a chance for change.
Give our children a chance for change through diversion, rehabilitation, and reintegration. This message is brought to you by the USAID OECS Juvenile Justice Reform Project 2, funded by the United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to oecs.org/JJRP.
There's no better way to start your day than with me on Good Morning Grenada. Covering everything you need to start your mornings off right. 6:35 a.m. on weekdays on all GBN platforms. Good Morning Grenada, adding a little blossom to your mornings. Cancer.
Welcome back, folks. It's Doctor in Call, Dr. Damian Greaves. He's our guest this evening, and we're looking at the social impact of chronic illnesses, and also we will be looking at, in just a moment, the work of the Chronic Illness Commission. Doc, just before the break, I meant to ask you, now, I'm looking at some statistics here. I mentioned the life expectancy for Grenada at 74.2 thereabout, but also the average annual income is just at 14.7 thousand. I mean, how can that? We're talking about an average a little over $1,200 a month. Clearly, it can't work.
Yeah, clearly it cannot work. Clearly it is extreme pressure. And remember, another chronic disease that we haven't mentioned is the aspect of mental health.
Right.
We need to talk about mental health, and we need to talk about mental health and neurological illnesses as well, and so on. So that's very important. And the stress levels would be high. I didn't even talk about suicide and attempted suicide across the region, including Grenada.
Right.
That is a source of concern as well. So you're correct. And that is why we're saying, I want to pause a little bit for people to understand this, and I want to take my time to outline what I'm saying. Health is more than health. Health is more than medicine. Health is more than going to the doctor and the nurse. Everything we do and everything around us contribute to what I call health, and more importantly, our individual health status. So you have the individual health status, that's you and me. You have the country's health status, which is the entire population, looking at both individual health and population health. So what are we talking about here? We are talking about all of government, whole of society. And guess what? part of your determinants of health could also be how your health system operates, how it is managed, how it is led, how much finances it gets. So the health system itself could be a determinant of health and individual health status and health outcomes for the country, right? The politics of the country is a determinant of health because the politics of the country is where your policies are determined for health and other things and other areas. So health stands like this, but it does not stand alone because everything around it contributes. So I often say to my students, for example, at St. George's University, that when you look at health, it is really the last rung, the RUNG in terms of if you're climbing a ladder or if you're coming down from a ladder, it is really the last rung because everything else has to go in there. Okay, so what the Ministry of Infrastructure does will have an impact. Take obesity, for example. If you want people to exercise, there must be proper lighting. That's the Ministry of Infrastructure. If you want people to jog and feel comfortable, you should have footpaths, for example. You have to contend, you can't have people competing with the road, with the traffic on the road, especially these days because the traffic has really gotten out of hand. Look at what happened in Bathroom. Yes. That is chronic. In fact, I would say traffic accidents now are part of our chronic problem that we need to begin to attack by using our public health experiences. Attack it in a public health way. So these are the kinds of things I'm talking about. So every ministry, if you talk about the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Trade is responsible for importation through its wholesalers and manufacturers and so on. We have to begin to look at what comes into the country and whether we should continue to have those things coming into the country. We have to look at what goes on. I mean, you have people all over the place doing different foods and things, so on. That's good. I mean, I enjoy them and so on. But we also have to be careful with all of those things that are beginning to come to the fore, because again, we must understand what we are putting in our bodies. So these are the kinds of things I'm talking about. So when we talk about the syndemic, for example, I described the syndemic for you, and I'm saying, look at what the syndemic is now. And this was brought to light during COVID-19 and up to now. So you have obesity. Apart from the obesity, you have undernutrition. But you also have to contend with climate change. And you have to focus attention on all of those challenges and have common solutions for all of those challenges. It cannot be this is the solution for obesity, this is the solution for undernutrition, this is the solution for this and that. We are saying that everything there has to be addressed in terms of combined challenges with combined solutions. And this is where the syndemic effect we are saying is taking place as we transit from a pandemic to a syndemic.
Right.
So all of those things have to be taken into account.
Okay, wonderful. So that takes us now to the commission. Let's just talk briefly, put it into perspective. When we speak of the chronic illness commission, tell us
chronic disease.
Chronic disease, yes. What is it, and what's the role of that commission?
Well, that is a very, very important question. And the first thing I want to look at is that we have to look at the background. The background for the formation of the commission was when we had the CARICOM heads of government meeting in Port of Spain. And that was what we call the Port of Spain Declaration on Non-Communicable Disease Prevention and Control in 2007. That also led to the establishment of the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, of which I'm a director currently, where it is like the umbrella organization for all of the civil society organizations involved in disease management. Whether you talk about cancers, whether you talk about your Grenada Cancer Society or your Diabetic Association, that's what we're talking about. All of those areas, and also other areas that have come together to look at this situation. So when we had the heads of government meeting, this came out, and it was suggested that we establish a mechanism for looking at what we call the multi-sectoral response by regional and global stakeholders. And the idea was to nurture and strengthen the response of all of these organizations to chronic diseases. And then, Godfrey, what are the functions of the Chronic Disease Commission? Simple. I mean, you look at leadership for the production, also evaluation, and I can say implementation of plans to deal with chronic diseases. You look at trying to engage all segments of the society. But one of the main functions is advocacy, to identify and to advocate for the implementation of government policy. And that is why one of the things we are looking at today is a National Childhood Obesity Policy and Action Plan for the state of Grenada. So advocacy for strengthening, and we're also looking at regional cooperation. So the Chronic Disease Commission, which we call the National Chronic Non-Communicable Disease Commission, we say Chronic Disease Commission for short, is a high-level commission appointed by cabinet, a creature of the Ministry of Health across the region, an agency, a task force to engage, to look at policy, to look at implementing health in all policies, whole of government, whole of society approaches, and to monitor and act on the determinants of health, as we said before, the determinants of chronic diseases, including those that are societal and environmental. So basically, that's what we're looking at. Basically, that's what the Chronic Disease Commission is all about. So you plan, you engage, you advocate, you advise, you communicate, you educate, you are professional, and you monitor and evaluate. And this is what we have been doing. And we have been looking at unhealthy eating, physical inactivity, the harmful use of alcohol, all of those things commissions across the region look at. Our commission was established on the 20th of June 2010, so 11 years in the making. What preceded the Chronic Disease Commission was a National Advisory Committee on Chronic Diseases, and that was in existence for more than 10 years, acting in an advisory capacity, looking at policy recommendations and things of that nature. So basically, this is what the Chronic Disease Commission is all about, Godfrey.
How successful have you been in advocating for policy changes or policy implementations as it relates to lessening or mitigating the chronic disease issues in Grenada?
Not as successful as we would want to be.
Why so?
Right now, I think we need greater support generally to be able to fulfill the mandate. And basically, we have been trying our best. We have been trying to get funding for different things. For example, we had a Healthy School Zones project that we did in collaboration with the Grenada Nutrition Council, where there were some 10 to 12 schools, 10 schools, that we had a pilot project where, because we were looking at healthy school zones, and we erected posters and we got funding from Grenlec. We approached Grenlec at the time. That was about 2 years ago, and Grenlec gave us the funding for the erection of those posters. But before that, we had engagements with the students at various schools. I myself was involved in one or two of the schools. We also had engagements with the parent teachers organizations. So that's what we do. We partner with organizations trying to fulfill that mandate. Right. We recently concluded a capacity building workshop for primary and secondary schools and parent teachers associations to reduce the risk of diabetes and other chronic diseases among school-aged children. For that, we got funding from the European Development Fund in the Office of the Ministry of Finance. And that has been done to date. We have recorded what has been done, and it will go around to the other schools as part of the school feeding program under the auspices of the Ministry of Education. Again, we partnered with the Ministry of Education, specifically the school feeding program, to get that done, because we believe it is important to look at the nutritious foods and to have the proper diet for our children in the face of the raging problem of obesity. To date, we are looking at the disease support groups, forming an umbrella organization, because we believe that you cannot deal with the Grenada Cancer Society and the Diabetic Association, and this other association and that other association separately. So we are trying our best, and we have had about 2 or 3 meetings with some of these organizations to look at the possibility of capacity building and look at the possibility of creating a situation where they are brought under one umbrella, whether you want to call them allied health organizations or groupings or whatever you want to talk about, so that there could be one way in which to deal with them, whether it is from finance, from management, from policy, etc., etc. That's what we actually want to look at. So we're actually working on that now and looking towards that.
Doc,
we're also looking at front of package warning labels, and we have received some funding from the Healthy Caribbean Coalition and engage a social media expert, a Grenadian, and a graphic artist, Grenadian again, to help us to craft those messages that will be placed on social media. You must have been hearing some of these, because I heard them. I listened to 93.9 all the time, and on mornings I could hear the issues on the advertisement on the front of package labeling, talking about the octagonal warning labels and things of that nature. So that's what we are doing. We are partnering with these people, with different entities, and trying to move in a particular way.
Now, you mentioned work with the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Education. You've gotten support from the EDF. You've gotten support from Grenlec. I have not heard you make any mention of any partnership or any support from the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, well, we work with the Ministry of Health. We work with the Health Promotion Unit. Of course, we work with the Ministry of Health. We think we could get more support. We're hoping we'll get some more support. We have been promised some what we call some money to help us move along and so on. We have not received it yet, but I'm confident that we should be receiving something soon, based on the feedback I got from certain individuals within the Ministry of Health. Because we need that kind of support. And by the way, let me say up front, I'm chair of the Chronic Disease Commission, and let me declare that all of these people work very hard on the Chronic Disease Commission, comprising various groups and the private sector, the civil society organizations like the disease groups themselves, disease support groups themselves, and various sectors in terms of the ministries and so on. And let me make it abundantly clear that this is voluntary work. Nobody is being paid on the commission, but we believe it is important for us to put our shoulders to the wheel and get this job done, because it is a ticking time bomb.
Do you provide any advocacy to the Ministry of Health as it relates to policy, yes, of course relating to chronic diseases?
Yes, we have tried to do that, and the latest on this issue is the National Childhood Obesity Policy and Action Plan, which we are finalizing to pass on to the Ministry of Health. We started off by having a national consultation on childhood obesity prevention, teachers, people from the various communities. We are now going to report back to them. It took quite some time, and we need to apologize for that. But I need to mention especially Dr. Frame and Dr. Nixon, the 2 individuals who have really been spearheading this effort, along with others. And now we are getting that policy document being crafted by Dr. Frame of St. George's University, an excellent individual where that is concerned, excellent policy person and so on. And we should have that rolled out before the end of April and hand it over to the Ministry of Health and see if we can partner with them in terms of advocacy as well as helping in terms of implementation.
Right. Now, Doc, the telephone line is going, but before we go to the telephone and take some calls, you mentioned the frontline packaging on items, which I think is really an excellent idea to sort of sensitize people. How far are we with that?
We have signed the contract with the social media consultants and graphic artists, and we're hoping that this will be rolled out, and it's supposed to be rolled out by next week, and it goes all the way to the end of May, where we're doing the sensitization of our people and so on, because we also want to ensure that those octagonal labels would be accepted by governments across the region and voted on by governments across the region. And of course, CrossQ was involved in this, and our local standards bureau would have been involved in this, and other ministries related to the local Bureau of Standards, the Grenada Bureau of Standards, would have been involved in this. And now it is voting time to say yea or nay for the octagonal front of package warning labels.
You mentioned CrossQ, Doc, and one of the concerns I have, though, as it relates to a lot of brands, a lot of products, you have these policies at the CARICOM level, where countries vote and they decide on different things, and what you find happening down the line is that as time go by, some countries do not follow some of the policy guidelines, and it's creating a problem.
Yeah, that has been a perennial problem. I mean, that has been a problem that we see every year. The problem with our CARICOM situation is that really we do not, or we cannot, or we refuse to bring pressure to bear on those who have been delinquent. And as far as I'm concerned, all Caribbean countries have been delinquent at one stage or the other. But you cannot take a hammer, Godfrey, and beat people on the head. What you have to arrive at is consensus and hope that people actually toe the line, if you want to put it that way, to make sure that we do this. But if people decide we're not doing it, you have to use persuasion, you have to use all the kind of agility that you can to persuade them, but you can't basically say, okay, we sanction you and we can't do this. I haven't heard that happen at the CARICOM level, and perhaps that is part of the weakness, but whether we can do it is something that we need.
I agree, but how does, let's say, a country like Grenada or St. Vincent stand up to the likes of Trinidad, who probably produces almost everything, and say, look, no, you are not abiding, it is not right? How do you stop them?
And that is the problem. I have no answer for that. Persuasion, I really have no answer for that. I'm thinking, if I was supposed to be a head of state and government, how would I react to that? And I guess you cannot be angry. What you have to do is cajole people, try to motivate them, and try to let the heads of state and government understand that this thing is important. I mean, they bought into the chronic disease situation. They are still buying into it. But we have seen, as I said, that they have dropped the ball. It is up to us in the Chronic Disease Commission, media people like yourselves, who understand what is going out there, to partner with us. And I'm not saying to put pressure on them, but rather to enlighten them, so that enlightenment can translate into proper policy action for the benefit of all and sundry within the country and by extension within the region.
But and of course, and this is why I'm always very happy to make this platform available for information like that. But with the frontline packaging, when you put your label there and you say, look, Buster has X amount of grams of sugar, and it is one of the main factors. And we're talking here about a national childhood obesity campaign to reduce that. How will the companies? And again, I mentioned Trinidad, no offense, but we get a lot of these things from there. How would they deal with it? How will they accept it?
The companies are already beginning to push back and to develop their own agenda to fight back. In Jamaica, for example, there were companies that were issued with lawsuits by the companies. Right? And companies issued lawsuits to civil society organizations. I really don't want to mention names. I don't want to mention names. But we're saying this is the pushback that you will see. You will see companies going ahead and say, okay, it's less sugar now. We don't sell, and we sell it differently. So we have the one with the sugar, and we have the one with less sugar, and we have the one with the sugar less, and so on. So in a particular way, we are beginning to move in a particular direction. But here's the situation. During COVID-19, there were companies across the region that offered assistance. But the idea is what kind of assistance in terms of the food and the drinks they gave to people who supposedly were not able to provide certain things under the COVID-19 experience. So you see, it is a question of education. I am convinced, Godfrey, that it is not a hammer over people's head or holding a gun to people's head. It is a question of getting people to come to understand how this affects you, even as a company. How it affects the people who work in your company in terms of the productivity level. How it affects your own family. How it affects you as company boss or CEO. And once we begin to sensitize people, that is going to be important. But guess what? A part of the way in which you can get people to come wrong or buy in is to have people from below, who are the people who are purchasing, beginning to demand, listen, we don't want all this sugar in our drinks anymore. We don't want all this salt in here anymore. We don't want all these saturated fats anymore. We want healthy foods. If people begin to have a groundswell and begin to understand, they're literate, they're educated, they understand the implications, and they begin to get that groundswell of support, then those who produce for us will have no choice.
And you see, right, and this is lovely, and I want to encourage people, but my final question before we go to the phone call, and this is getting very interesting, shouldn't our policy makers, and I'm talking here our leaders, shouldn't they be providing the moral support and assistance to the people on the ground to understand the importance? Hey, look, people who are in poverty, you are the ones that are most vulnerable. We are providing them some kind of support. That is not good. Is that really happening? Or will the commission be lobbying for our policymakers to go on a campaign, go on an educational drive to help people at that level to understand the importance?
Brilliant. And that's where we head into. That's why we're into this front of package labeling. That's why we're hiring the social media consultant and the graphic artist to put things in the vernacular, in our local language, to use iconic individuals like our Calypsonians or sports people who have excelled, to see if they can help people to understand, because to use influential people like Godfrey, who is at the console now and who is at the console almost every night and day, to be able to say those things out there. That's what we're talking about. So if we talk about obesity, what is better than children, educating children who could go home to their parents and say, oh, mommy, too much salt, we're not using all that salt, teachers say that salt is not good, too much sugar, go to the supermarket, oh, mommy, oh, uncle, oh, godfather, we don't want that, give us water instead. You'll be surprised at the magnitude of progress you can make. So it must come from below, it must come from above, but remember, those above also sometimes pander to those who seemingly have a certain amount of economic power or economic influence, who sometimes fund the campaigns and things of that nature. So you have to walk a tightrope and walk a critical path, making sure that you do not upset too many people in the process, but ensuring that, well, use people like the Chronic Disease Commission or entities like the Chronic Disease Commission to develop that approach and have the groundswell of support. Because when people ask for it, you cannot deny it.
But if you don't have it, and you see, I'm saying that on the background that 75% of the things that we consume are imported.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, they are more affordable.
Right. You're correct. Yes, they are more affordable. But what did COVID-19 teach us? And I want to borrow the words of my very good friend, Dr. Professor Wendy Grenade. COVID-19 disrupted us. We now have to disrupt the disruption. We have an opportunity to restart the button, much cliched phrase. We now have an opportunity to reimagine how we do certain things. COVID-19 brought that opportunity. Why? Because during COVID-19, importation was stymied. We had some problems. Your tourists were not coming in. You could not import as you want because you could not get things out as you want. So let us begin to reimagine and reset the button and begin to concentrate on local production without necessarily saying we're not getting those out there. And again, the groundswell is if you have your people to accept what you have within the country, they'll begin to reject what is the nonsense that is coming from overseas.
I agree with you.
That is it. It must come from the people in terms of lobbying, educating, advocating, motivating, getting them to understand the importance of this. And once they understand the importance, they can make a conscious and deliberate decision to say, I'm not taking that, I'm taking that. I'm not taking that, I'm taking that. Once you do that, people will have to change the modus operandi in terms of what they do.
Doc, let's go to the telephone. It's been going for a while. Dr. and Call, good evening.
Great, Doc Godfrey, great program. By the way, I didn't get the name of this chap because I tuned in a couple of minutes late. What's the name of this chap?
Dr. Damian Greaves.
Damian Greaves, yes. And listen, tell me something. Is he a medical doctor?
No, he's not.
Can he hear me?
Doc, talk to the caller.
Caller, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm the chair of the Chronic Disease Commission, and health is part of my expertise.
It doesn't matter. I just wanted to know if you qualified as a medical doctor, because all that you're saying there is on the heavy stuff. Listen, Godfrey, it is a serious catch-22 situation. The last interventions there relative to what they sell us and what they obligate us to buy, the addictive nature of the sugar, the salts, and whatnot, what we heard of a couple of weeks ago by the various people there, Dr. Nixon and Ms. Brung and so. Interesting. But boy, we have a serious situation here. Which of these things are cheaper is what they lay on us. And you understand me? In poverty, you take the easy way out. Convenience. So I fully agree with him that mobilizing the people, the users, and it's something I want to also suggest, that you call the names of the products that we should not eat. The Ben Bucky Bride and all of them is poison for people. And we have to call them out. But here, this one I want to talk about, Mr. Greaves, as we go along in this campaign. And you mention it, air quality and the contaminated air that we are obligated to breathe in this air country. Listen to me. You know what it is to wear a gas mask in the middle of the night with a charcoal kiln, otherwise known as a coal pit, burning, antagonizing people from breathing with some serious respiratory problems, as in my case. It ain't an easy thing, my dear brother. And this is one of the things that kills people. You know that major chronic diseases and around the world cause and people die. I think it's about 7% of the deaths per annum comes from air pollution. And this is a thing that we have laws protecting in this here country. You can go to the Ministry of Agriculture in this here country and get a license to burn as you so desire. All sorts of things, including plastics. And you know that in the burning of plastics, the dioxins that are produced, this is killing our people. In other words, we're eating, additional to eating ourselves alive, we're smoking ourselves out alive. And so I fully agree with you. I didn't know of this commission, and you say it's been 11 years. I'm happy that it's there. I'll be getting in touch with you ASAP so that I can make my noises with you and your commission to change the course of things in this here country and to get the so-called policymakers to understand that their duty is to protect the population of this country in all levels. So I thank you very much, Godfrey, for this program tonight. Is a powerful one. Like all the others, Dr. Nixon, don't feel how you always come in great as a leader of one of in these messages that come out. Thank you very much, Godfrey. Do have a nice night. Will you, Mr. Greaves?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, I feel very good that you gave that endorsement, and I'm saying that. So let the advocacy and let the campaign begin, Godfrey. We already have one person ready to join us. All we have to do is mobilize and see if we can galvanize support and try to move in a direction where we can protect the health of our people and improve their individual health status and the health status of the country at large.
Yes, indeed. Our telephone number 435-2041. Let's go back to the telephone. Doctor and caller, good evening. Hello.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller.
Yes, I want to make a contribution.
Yes, go ahead, please. Can you speak a little louder? Thank you.
You hearing me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I agree with the doctor on the whole question of public education. and beginning with the young ones, even from preschool up. But I also have a very serious concern because in a number of countries, take Trinidad for example, you have quotas that government put in place as to how much of what item can come into a country at any given time, whether it's on a quarterly basis or a yearly basis. You have certain items that a government will decide, listen, we are not going to import. Definitely. Trinidad produces Nestle's condensed milk. They are not going to import the Dutch lady milk coming in from Holland. So the government has to take a decision. When you think about it, 75% of what we eat here is imported. Imagine a thing like mango. I was surprised when a friend of mine had a packet of something eaten yellow. I said, what's that? She said mango. Where it's from? Imported from Thailand. So what we do in Grenada is we exporting, and I'm not talking Thailand now, we exporting Trinidad and other places, our raw material, the best of it, the best fish, we exporting all of that. And this scum is what we have for the people. We exporting all our yellow mangoes, and we imported mangoes, red mango, filled with preservatives. Coconut milk is being imported in this country. Saffron is being imported in this country. What are we doing in terms of setting up industries? We have so much raw material. All we know to do with our fruits is to suck it. If we can't suck it, it goes to waste. We have the raw material. Which government will think about the people, the next generation, and say, let us invest in setting up manufacturing industries so that we know what we are consuming and we can sell it to the consumers at a cheaper price. We are not doing that. So with all the education that we have, we cannot meet the local demand because we do not have industries to produce the items that our people need to consume, which is healthy. Then what choice do the people have? You can educate the people, but the government needs to take a decision and set up industries, get technical support from the Japanese, the Canadians, and all of that. Imagine all this sardine we import in filled with preservatives, and it's the same jacks or the small fish that we have there that we can and we can sell to the people. So we have a serious problem in Grenada, and attention needs to be given to that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, caller.
Well said, caller. I mean, I cannot add any more to that because you have said it and you're a strong advocate. I feel you could be you could partner with us to do a lot of these things. And yes, the governments across the region, not only the government of Grenada, governments across the region need to be called into account to begin to look at those issues very seriously. And again, at the risk of boring your listeners out there, COVID-19 taught us a lesson.
Yeah.
It seriously taught us a lesson about what we are doing, about what we are supposed to do. And now is the time, as I said, to sort of pull back and look at the situation and say, okay, in keeping with that, let's move in a particular direction. The difficulty is that sometimes when you rise out of the pandemic or the syndemic, as some people are saying now, you get comfortable again. Yep. And then it hits you again, and you go back and reinvent the wheel. I'm hoping with COVID-19, that COVID-19 was a dress rehearsal, perhaps for greater to come. Greater to come than COVID-19. So this is a dress rehearsal where we ought to get our act together, whether it's with chronic diseases and anything, and we bring those things into account and keep them there and wait for the next one, knowing that we have a blueprint that we can tweak to be able to handle it better the next time it comes.
Right.
It's not a question that every time it comes, we have to start over again and say, oh gosh, let's do this. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it on track. And let's try, as I said, to disrupt whatever future disruptions may in fact be coming to the fore.
We go back to the telephone. Doctor and caller, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller. Go ahead, please.
Doc?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. This is a very... Well, Doc, I can thank you for educating me as an individual. And I'll give that lady that spoke a while ago 500%. Because the fact remains like that. If we want our economy to grow at a broad scale,
we have to develop from the grassroots to come up. In other words, then have factories to manufacture our things here. Just like lady said, we have a lot of things here. The mango, I remember during Bishop time, Bishop did a lot of that. That's why the bigger countries didn't like Grenada, because why? Grenada was moving very swift and strong. So the same thing we could do, build factories here to manufacture our resources like mango, pear, this, that, tutbagai. And when we do that, even what the lady said with the same sardine, okay? Most times I see many people, they have seine, they have net, they all have a sprat. Why can't they can these things on them and export it? So what you say in the doc, you really educating us. And I thank Mr. Rolo too. Some people will have good ideas, but they wouldn't talk. When you talk, now what they tell you? You call the TV station too regular. But what you're saying is true, and nothing but the truth. And the truth does offend some people.
Thank you very much, caller. Thanks a lot indeed for your contribution. All right.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. And I would say that is really, really important. And now our people must begin to demand from the politicians and the political parties what we really want to see. Chronic diseases should be on the agenda of any political party coming on the campaign trail now to say, what is it exactly you're going to do to assist this very, very troubling situation that we are facing now?
Right. Let's go back to the telephone. Dr. and call, good evening. Okay, we lost that call. The number 435-2041. You can ask your question, or if you want to make a contribution, we'll be happy to accommodate you. The number again, 435-2041. Doc, in the meantime, about the commission again, the rolling out of the frontline packaging. Once that everything is in place, how will it work in the will we be seeing it in the supermarkets and shops?
Yes, you'll be seeing it in the supermarkets. There will be advertisements and so on. It will be in the supermarkets. And it will be big enough for people to be able to read. So you go into the supermarket and you see this black and white label, octagonal shape situation, and you read it, and basically you can make a decision as to whether you would reject or you would accept.
Right.
So basically that's all. So you will see that rolling out once it is voted and agreed upon.
Right.
And so that is going to be critical for us as well.
We go back to the telephone. Dr. and call, good evening. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, very excellent program. The question of the grouping. If I have a child, I had a child who had cancer, and the child died, and I want to support the Cancer Society financially. How would the grouping, just putting all the diseases together in one group, how would I be able to channel my support to the Cancer Society?
No, okay, well, that's a very good question. You could still channel it to the Cancer Society. We're not saying that when they're like this, there would be basically everything going into one pot and so on. I don't think that's how we envisage this situation. Your support will still go to the Cancer Society, but we're saying basically when you look at management, at organization, at campaigns, at education and so on, we want to see that we do it together, because we cannot separate the diseases in that way, because as we said, it's one challenge and one solution. So don't have no fear of your money not going into certain places or going into certain places. What we are suggesting is that we need to move in a particular direction to get people to understand that we cannot continue to operate in silos.
No, definitely, because with the number of chronic diseases around, a grouping would make a lot more sense in tackling all those illnesses. Yes. You have a stronger force to go out there and to make things happen.
I mean, Trinidad and Tobago is a good example. They have what you call the alliance. I've forgotten the real now. The Chronic Disease Alliance, or the Disease Alliance, headed by an executive. And what they do, they engage the various CSOs or civil society organizations. They go between those CSOs and the government, and they get it working very well. And in fact, the Chronic Disease Commission is thinking along those lines as well. We will have both the Chronic Diseases Commission, if that is necessary, and have the allied disease organizations or chronic disease situations so that they can work together. Let us say, for example, how beautiful could it be if you have a situation of a one-day health situation, and you have all of those disease groups, support groups, establishing various tents and pooling the resources. How beautiful could that be?
Oh, yes, indeed.
To have a project. How beautiful could it be if everybody coming together and pooling their resources for that project, whether it is project writing skills. Why should you have the Cancer Society doing a project for itself, the Diabetes Organization doing a project for itself?
That's right.
We're saying that there are slightly different issues clinically and otherwise, but there are ways in which we can come to operate together and see, and the ideal is to see that, listen, we in this together, one challenge, one solution, so to speak.
And of course, and considering when an individual can be plagued with more than one chronic disease.
Yeah, we spoke about the multi-morbidity situation.
Definitely. Let's go back to
Somebody is in the Cancer Society. That person has cancer. Then you have the Diabetic Association. That person has diabetes. So we have to begin to look at these things in a particular way. Right?
Let's go back to the telephone. Doctor and call, good evening. Hello. Good evening, caller.
Good evening to you, Godfrey.
Good evening. Can you go ahead, please, and speak a little louder? Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I guess probably my location. I just wanted to commend you on your choice this evening for Dr. and Call, who I happen to know personally, and I refer to him as comrade. It is good to know that you can make certain selection, and sometimes there's a saying, not sometimes there's a saying, a king is never honored in his country. But the brethren certainly have been dispensing some positive and good vibes for our local people. And I just want to commend him and tell him, keep up the good works. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for the encouragement.
Yes, indeed. Let me see if we have any comments on our WhatsApp. Okay. Yes, we do, but Doc, I don't think you might be able to handle those comments. I don't think you know anything about epilepsy and autism.
I wouldn't even attempt to go there. But there are indeed chronic diseases.
Yes.
I need a Dr. Nixon or Dr. Francis Martin to handle those situations.
Yes, indeed.
I do not want Godfrey to have me arrested for being a quack.
Okay, yes indeed. Well, we have time for one final call, 435-2041. We can take a final call before we wrap for this evening. Time goes by so quickly. So if not, Doc, just to summarize, because this is very important, and let me say to you that you have an open invitation, because I think this drive is very, very important, very significant, especially considering the amount of chronic patients we have in Grenada. It is important for us to go out there and advocate, for better health management or self-management, because that will be the key, and right under that, our diet choices. So yes,
we have learned that, of course, consuming unhealthy foods is the number one killer.
Indeed.
Number one problem.
Indeed.
But in all of this, we also have to talk about the COVID-19 experience. So I want to say that COVID-19 has in fact highlighted the importance of public health, the importance of primary health care, the importance of a team approach, the importance of multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral action. And when I say multidisciplinary, all hands on deck, whether you're talking about economics or finance or the social situation or climate change or environmental change, all of these things must be taken into account. All ministries, right? We're talking about whole of government. We're talking about health in all policies. So in the Ministry of Trade, if you're making a decision, where is the health in that policy? In the Ministry of Infrastructure, if you're making a decision, where is the health in that policy? In the Ministry of Education, where is the health in that policy? So health in all policies, as well as we need to identify people in conditions of vulnerability, including people living with chronic diseases and other groups, such as poor people, persons with disabilities, women, children, youth, people of various descendants and so on, are indigenous people as well. We have to make sure that they're on board, because we're saying the needs of people living with chronic diseases and other vulnerable persons must be determined and incorporated into planning for COVID-19 and its aftermath to guide investment in health systems that offer what I consider to be comprehensive, people-centered services that do not cause financial hardship to the users and that advance universal health care based on the primary health care approach.
Right, yes indeed. And Doc, on that note, this is where we have to wrap. That's all the time we have for this evening. But as I said, there's an open invitation. I would definitely like to have you back, and if possible, other persons involved in the commission, so we can continue this discussion, because I think it is very, very important, and we need to put a lot more emphasis on the chronic illnesses here in Grenada. So, Dr. Greaves, thank you very much for
the invitation.
We thank you. So it's a pleasure, and we look forward to having you again. So until next time, enjoy the rest of the evening and take good care.
Thank you very much, and everybody out there, follow the protocol, wear a mask, sanitize or wash your hands, maintain the social distancing, despite the fact that Grenada has done an excellent job in terms of the cases, of the active cases. Let us not drop our guard. Let us make sure we stay there. Let us make sure we get to the destination that we need to. And I say to all of you, good night, thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your calls. Thank you for your contribution. We really do appreciate it, and we want to encourage everyone to manage themselves. Chronic disease, in most cases, you won't be able to get them cured, but you can live with them. They're not death sentences. So please remember, eat healthy, exercise, and manage what you put inside of you. All right, be very, very careful. You don't want to be in a situation where you're not able to work or to provide for your family. It can add to the stress. Yeah, it can add to the stress. So thank you once again. Tomorrow evening I'll be back. Don't forget, we have Release It. Tomorrow we have an open line because Alan wouldn't be here. He'll be here on Thursday, and of course on Friday, We Culture. Thanks again, and do have a good night.